Yeah, our stuff was more.
Cool. All right, so welcome back, everybody. Super glad to have you here for the third session of the DAO Build Guild. Today's session will basically, I'll give a quick refresher on Zodiac and dive a little bit deeper into what the Zodiac reality module does. And then it will kind of walk through the different steps for setting it up. And then we'll basically walk through setting it up together on an XDAI safe. This time it's XDAI rather than Rinkeby as in the session notes because Rinkeby is unexpectedly down. So a few last minute changes, but we'll set up Zodiac reality module and SafeSnap and hopefully get to a snapshot vote that then you can use with the exit mod that we set up last time so you can leave the organization if we don't like the vote proposal outcome. So yeah, presentation, tutorial, vote is the basic format. So once again, Zodiac is the expansion pack for DAOs. It's a composable design philosophy and a collection of tools built according to an open standard because DAOs are not monoliths, they are constellations. And the 4 Zodiac tools available in the Zodiac app on Gnosis Safe today are exit, delay, reality, and bridge. There's other tools like Zila, Safe Minion built by DAO House, and others available elsewhere. But these are the 4 you'll see in the Safe app. And one point to hammer home here is that these are actually a lot of tools to kind of connect different existing DAO platforms, both with each other and with the Safe. So rather than kind of proposing one all-encompassing platform, Zodiac seeks to kind of build bridges between them. So in learning Zodiac, we'll actually interact with a ton of other DAO platforms in the process. And you can access them all in the Zodiac app on Gnosis Safe. And here you'll see just a kind of example safe with some of them set up. And basically on the left, you have the ones that have been set up on the safe. And on the right, you have the opportunity to add more and plug and play. So for today's session, basically the objectives, as I mentioned before, are to set up the Zodiac reality module on an XDAI safe, create a reality ETH Oracle instance, deploy the module, configure SafeSnap on Snapshot, create proposal on Snapshot, and then vote using the XDAI token that I created today. And so what is reality? The Zodiac reality mod. Also, what is reality? So this module allows on-chain execution based on the outcome of events reported by the reality ETH Oracle. So while built initially to execute Gnosis Safe transactions, according to Snapshot proposals, this module is framework agnostic. It can enable proposal execution from just about anywhere. For example, it can bring Discord polls on-chain. So the basic format of the Zodiac reality module is that it uses an oracle to take some type of information that's off-chain, submit it on-chain, and if a proposal is successful, allow that code that has been submitted with a proposal to be executed by anyone. So for example, you could have a Discord ranked choice poll where everyone picks 3 options in the order that they would prefer them with emojis. And then take that outcome, pass it to an oracle that says, yes, this proposal has passed for the one that was most favored, and then bring that proposal on chain. So key to the kind of construction here of how this model works is an oracle. So one of the kind of links in the session preparation materials was just an overview from ETHub about what oracles are. Definitely recommended reading as they come and go as like one of the main problems blockchain faces. So in super short summary, an oracle could be described as a conceptual solution which takes real world off-chain data and submits a copy of this information into blocks, which make it available for future smart contract use. So it's a way to get what people often say like real world data on-chain. And there are a few different approaches to this. It is on some level difficult to make workable decentralized oracles. However, for Gnosis Zodiac reality module, we've been super happy to use the reality ETH oracle, which functions as a kind of escalation game-based oracle. So basically, you can pose to this oracle, you can ask different questions. You should try to be as clear as possible. You can determine how long this question will be open and enter an incentive reward for those answering the question if you expect other people to answer. And then if a kind of proposal comes to where it needs a question comes to where it needs arbitration, you can pick an arbitrator to settle a kind of indecisive outcome. So this could be, for example, will the Mets win the World Series, a baseball example, or it could be, will X candidate win a presidential election? And asking this question openly, then anyone can answer it. So you post your answer as an answerer, you post your answer in a bond. It's an escalation game-based oracle, so there's financial incentives to have the correct answer, and it can escalate if not. So in this case, correct answers receive their bonds back. So this could be something like, 0.1 ETH, 1 ETH, but it also could be ERC20 tokens too. And incorrect answers lose their bond. So answers can be challenged via the posting of another answer in higher bonds. And final unchallenged answers are accepted as correct, but arbitration can be requested to dispute an accepted answer. And once the arbitration fee is paid, the question is locked and the arbitrator sends the answer to smart contract, releasing the bond and reward to the correct answer. So we're not going to go too deep into kind of arbitration mechanisms today, but just to let you know that usually on the other side, particularly of decentralized Oracle, there is an arbitration mechanism that happens if an Oracle outcome is indecisive or challenged. So this is basically what's at the core of the reality module, and hence us calling it Zodiac Reality Mod, is that it uses the Oracle address by default, reality.eth, which I've just described, escalation game-based. You set a bond, other can set higher bond, the correct answer receives the bond back. And basically here, using the reality version 3 ETH contracts, you're able to create a kind of template to bring DAO proposals on chain to a safe. And what that looks like is basically the reality module that you encounter in the Gnosis safe prompts you with this to create, have the Oracle address, but then create a template ID. What this means is that you'll create a reality Oracle template ID. So here, super nice, we've been working with the team there. The template is already set up on the reality interface. So you will see this in live and tutorial, but you can drop down and choose the Zodiac reality module template. What this basically does is just says, was this proposal archived at this hash successful? And it uses a generic framework for all proposals. And you can set your ENS name. So basically what space you're using or kind of related. And you come back and you enter it in. And there's also several other parameters that you can enter, which we'll go through in much slower detail when we're actually doing the tutorial. Is things like timeout, so how long anyone can answer the question, and then cooldown. After the question has successfully passed through the Oracle, there's a cooldown period between which the proposal can actually be executed. This allows, if it's a potentially big or kind of potentially breaking change, this will give teams time to prepare code or time to prepare other processes that need to be in place before the proposal can be executed. There's also expiration. So this is if a transaction or a proposal has been successful, but the transaction is not executed within a certain amount of time, it expires. And then you also set the bond. So this is the minimum bond for the reality ETH Oracle that will set the kind of initial stake of someone answering the question. And so after you set this all on the kind of Zodiac mod interface, you confirm the transaction from your safe. And then it's complete and you're ready to move on to the next step, which we'll do in tutorial today, is connecting then this reality ETH Oracle to Snapshot. So I think quite a lot of you might be familiar with Snapshot, but it's been a super cool tool that was originally developed by Balancer Labs for their own needs, and then became super popular in the DAO ecosystem because it's an off-chain voting platform, which therefore saves gas fees. It basically works by taking a snapshot of tokens and wallet addresses at a specific block number. So it prevents one address being able to move tokens from one address to another and being able to vote multiple times with the same tokens. And the specific block number is specified at the proposal start. So this is one example of a snapshot proposal. This is from Pleaser DAO, the collector DAO that initially collected the People Pleaser NFT and then connected the Snowden NFT and then went on to collect many others that they vote using their kind of internal token on a snapshot space, whether to acquire works or not. So here's an outcome of a vote that everyone voted yes to collect the Tor Onion NFT. So Tor is the kind of browser project, and here's the vote. Everyone voted yes. I think not all of their votes are always so unambiguous. But yeah, basically a coin voting platform. However, as rightfully coin voting has kind of come under a lot of scrutiny, as we'll see today, Snapshot also offers many different voting strategies, which I think is not super widely known in the ecosystem because they've been working on it a ton. So they also offer out of the box now quadratic voting. They also offer kind of unique address voting or other forms. We'll see all of them today. So this isn't the only kind of style of voting available by Snapshot, although it was the one that I would say DAOs and teams took first too. So basically, after you've set up your reality mod on the Gnosis Safe, you come back to the Snapshot platform and you add a plugin. So here you would add SafeSnap. So this is the kind of original name of the Zodiac plugin. And it's specifically the name of the interface through which you set up the Zodiac reality mod on Snapshot. A little confusing, you can let me know if I have any questions, but basically the SafeSnap is an interface through which you connect the Zodiac reality mod that's on your safe to the Snapshot instance that's on Snapshot. So basically connecting them to and saying proposals prepared for transactions on Snapshot connect to the safe. So here's an example. After you enable the plugin, you come and you can see basically related to a particular proposal, you could say, I want to transfer funds alum pink to a given wallet address. So in this example, you could say, I want to propose that our grants program receives 10K in funding from this safe. And you make this proposal, and then here you pre-prepare the transaction and add the transaction to the proposal. And then once the proposal is hopefully successful, then you're able to come back after the cooldown period and actually execute the transaction from the Snapshot interface. So anyone in the community at all can execute this transaction. It doesn't have to be anyone who's a signer on the safe that it relates to. So essentially what this achieves is basically a few things. It takes off-chain voting on-chain, as we've talked about, but also at its core, it allows anyone in a community to have access to a community treasury, which you've seen. I feel like there's been a lot of kind of calling out recently about, well, like how decentralized is a DAO if it has something like, 6 out of 10 signers on a multi-sig. But what Zodiac formulates instead is that multi-sigs are actually more like programmable accounts that can have super customizable logic, and that you can decouple the kind of account from the actual voting style and the way that it's used. So it might be a multi-sig for how it interacts with some DeFi apps, but if you enable SafeSnap with the Zodiac mod on a given safe, then it essentially becomes a community treasury that anyone who makes successful proposals to the DAO can then execute transactions and not have to rely on the multi-sig signers associated with the DAO. This means that the multi-sig signers still have veto power, but eventually you could set all of the Gnosis Safe signers to just one unusable address and therefore have no signers so that it's a fully community accessible kind of multi-sig. Yeah, and so live streaming this in our Discord right now, and basically here you can see how to learn more about this if you're joining the session for the first time today. And yeah, I just want to take a second and basically open up for questions before we begin the tutorial, which will go through all of this in a little bit more detail with redundancy and slower.
Amazing, amazing. I have a couple that I could kick us off with, but
Sure.
I'll pause just to see if anyone else has anything. One thing, and Kia, we don't have to spend too much time on it because I don't know how much time we have, but the bond idea, I was wondering if we just go back to that for a second, and wanted to make sure I understood what like a real, maybe an example might help me of that type of minimum bond.
Sure. So in order to answer the question, so there's a few different approaches to kind of decentralized oracles. One of them is just kind of escalation game based, which is the model that Reality ETH takes and kind of goes deeper into in the white paper, which I've actually linked to on the session notes for anyone who's interested in diving deeper. Essentially how it works is that in order to answer the question, to give the oracle a question. So let's take an example of should DAO fund let's see, should DAO fund a kind of community grants program? And it's a proposal submitted to the DAO, and basically the proposal passes. And then what's submitted to the oracle in this example is that the proposal should DAO fund a community grants program was successful. And basically it's then saying, then people can have to kind of come to the oracle itself. And let's say we've set a 0.1 ETH bond on it. Someone has to put up this bond. So actually kind of lock it in the contract, let's say, in order to say that, yes, this proposal did in fact pass. This is correct information that should go on chain. However, for some reason, someone might say, well, either I want to, there could be some either malicious or in a lot of cases, questions might seem more indecisive. Someone might challenge it and say no. And in order to challenge it, the challenger has to come and actually deposit a higher bond and up the stakes. And so on and so forth, so that in order to challenge the existing answer, basically you have to submit higher and higher bond. So there's economic stake, and whoever submits the question, the answer that becomes successful is able to take, everyone who's submitted to the correct answer is able to take their bonds back and also profit. There are cases like there's a kind of really interesting actually example of the limits of oracle systems in arbitration was with the Omen prediction markets and the 2020 presidential election, when it was actually kind of arbitrated because it was argued that there was some lack of clarity in how the question was phrased. So it went past this kind of escalation game-based oracle and it was actually challenged for an arbitration bond, saying that this should go to kind of a jury rather than just a kind of simple escalation game base. In this case, it went to the Claros arbitration system, in which basically Claros has its own system of arbitration, which allows it uses a Schelling point dynamic of token holders to try to arrive at the correct answer. Not all of these systems are perfect. And if you read like a lot of recent pieces have actually been looking at the kind of limitations of financial incentives for justice, let's say, which I actually wholeheartedly agree with, but that's the basic model, if that's clear.
It is. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really cool to hear the basic game and then also the limits of the game. So thank you. My second question was back towards the end. First of all, it's really awesome to see what happens when you get to a snapshot proposal that was completely off-chain, and then immediately right there, there's that execute transaction button in the top or the bottom right corner. The other examples you gave other than Snapshot in terms of off-chain were things like Discord, other places where off-chain votes could occur. Is the Snapshot off-chain interface, like, is that always the flow that you always go through Snapshot, or is it possible to go like off-chain Discord with some type of pop-up or message in Discord to execute transaction? How does that work?
Yeah, so right now at the moment, we only have the interfaces available for Snapshot, or the interface here to actually execute the transaction directly from the interface. You could do it from command line for different kind of information sources. And we're also working on a kind of prototype of a Discord kind of bot for polling that would then be able to feed the information and make the transaction executable. It's all possible in terms of from command line, but this is the only kind of live interface to do so at the moment. The main thing is just, yeah, you have to do a lot more from command line just to be able to, and just deploying contracts, etc., to do it without.
Cool, awesome.
Kia, the example from Omen about the 2020 election going to arbitration because of the clarity of the question is a really interesting one. And I wonder if you can expand just a little bit on how you think about what a clear question really is, particularly in the context, of like EIPs, for instance, have this very specific language around like must means this, should means this, ought means this. And it's like very clearly indicated when you use these specific keywords in your specification of a given contract standard, like they have very particular and well scoped meanings. So I wonder if you have like thoughts about like setting cultural standards along the sort of similar lines for what a clear question must adhere to or ought to adhere to.
Sure. So it's funny because there's like two sides to this answer. And one is that, you know, I myself and team members have worked on different guides for how to phrase a clear kind of unambiguous question for a prediction market. And it includes like all specificities like date format, time format, specifying kind of region through which the date format is specified, as well as using kind of clear language in terms of because there was a kind of question of, you know, you could say that the kind of date lapse between a presidential election and the actual inauguration, and at what point does the president actually become president, could lead to ambiguity. So it's also a question of the kind of ambiguity of the event itself and the point at which it's actually said to have been taken place. So there's guidelines both on kind of clarity of format, but also clarity of like events you're specifying. And what I've found in kind of preparing a lot of these guides, which I'm happy to share in the Slack, there's a lot of public guides of how do you prepare a clear question for an oracle or for a prediction market. But what I've found actually is that it's kind of, you know, it's turtles all the way down, because you can go clear and clear. And then at some point, often it makes the question like less intuitive and less clear to the kind of people who might be staking on it. So if you say like, I'm looking at specific examples, but sometimes you can be so clear and precise with language that its conversational ability is lost. So it can be something like, you know, like even in the example of like, will X candidate be president at like 8:01 a.m. after the inauguration on X day? You know, that also kind of calls into effect, like, what if something happens to them? Like, is it actually about the election anymore? Is it about this specific inauguration event? So long story short is that I think actually one thing that I think as a community, I think prediction markets and also just oracle questions in general, I think still haven't fully seen their day, but could possibly see their day in a couple of years. And what we'll find is that we actually need to account for a kind of human ambiguity and a kind of like non-rational understanding of language in order for these questions and for these systems to work at all. And that's when we start seeing like actually maybe a need for human traditional institutions to like think through clarity of language, because if it can't be reduced to kind of a clear mathematical formula, like it's very hard to make it machine readable in a way that doesn't require an institution. That's my long answer.
Perfect. Okay, I think there's one more question in the chat from Aaron, and then we can maybe move on. Aaron, if you want to unmute, go ahead.
Oh, I don't know if this is a dumb question. I saw a Gnosis table at G256 Women in Blockchain at the Recolor conference a couple of years ago. And I just don't remember it being branded. Well, obviously, like DAOs wasn't a thing way back when, or even oracles, where I always understood oracles in terms of like Augur. So when I saw all of like the new tooling, like this, let's say the past like couple of months, it's definitely a big shift. But I was just wondering, like, in terms of like what the branding was back then and how it evolved with the creation of Gnosis Guild more recently versus just Gnosis.
Yeah.
If you can mention that, because I just feel like, oh, I have so much catching up to do. And I know I missed the other sessions. I think with the Huntus calendar, I couldn't add on my Google Calendar for some reason, but I was just curious on your take on that.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been at Gnosis for 4 years, so I wasn't at that conference, but I remember when a colleague went. Basically, Gnosis is a prediction markets company that has built several prediction market frameworks that are live and used today. And also, we've kind of diversified everything that we've built and added on to that value by turning several things that we're using internally into successful product lines, as well as other types of products. So for instance, the Gnosis Safe, which we'll figure a lot in today's tutorial, and also obviously just figured in this session, was a kind of developed internally and became a popular multi-sig wallet among projects about 3 years ago. And since we've continued developing it more because it's become a kind of community favorite tool for multi-sig wallet holdings, but as well as teams, DAOs, enterprise solutions, or individuals to basically hold funds in common. And basically have continued that product development, as well as developed a kind of trading protocol line. So the latest of which is CowSwap. And it was built on Gnosis Protocol v2. And basically how Gnosis has evolved at large is that it's many teams of super talented engineers and others who've, I'm super proud of how far it's come and kind of just contributed base layer infrastructure to the ecosystem, because often, when the project was really starting, 4 or 5 years ago, there wasn't that much infrastructure on Ethereum itself. So in order to build one dApp, you had to build kind of 5 before it. And now we've kind of come to a point where with Gnosis, we see it as in large part like a decentralized infrastructure company building for the Ethereum ecosystem overall. With several different kind of protocol and product areas. Gnosis Guild, especially dear to me, is a small team that has kind of emerged within Gnosis and out of Gnosis, because in building Gnosis Safe and then seeing the rise of Gnosis Safe as a tool for DAOs, as well as SafeSnap, which we'll learn how to set up today, just seeing that there's actually a really strong need for like critical infrastructure for DAOs that doesn't exist at the moment. So things like bringing off-chain votes on-chain, as well as the exit mod that we saw last time, but basic kind of composable tooling, cross-platform that allows organizations to evolve over time. So we've kind of emerged as a small team incubated by Gnosis, and we're building the Zodiac tools. It's built essentially as an open standard for DAO tooling. So SafeSnap, Zodiac Reality Mod adhere to an open standard. However, we are building a lot of the interfaces through the Gnosis Safe to combine the Gnosis Safe with other DAO platforms. And basically just kind of filling a gap in governance related tooling. And myself and Oren and Sam and a few others on the team, Nathan, et cetera, have been interested in kind of forms of governance for some time. So this was a really unique opportunity for us to be able to kind of apply all of the knowledge that we've gained in the last 4 years towards really building specific tools that we see missing. And basically, short answer is we're like a small team at Gnosis building governance tools.
Awesome. It's awesome. I really love Gnosis Guild, if it's not clear yet. And I really love hearing that story about how Gnosis has shaped. It really feels like the constellation analogy that you've given earlier, Kia, fits for Gnosis as well.
It's been a fun journey.
Yeah. Do you feel like we have time for one more question, or do you want to, how do we feel?
Let me just double check the time. I think so.
Okay. Amarnath, I think, has his hand. Go ahead.
Sure. So one of my questions is, so when there are answers for questions, generally they're subjective in nature. Is there a model for like jurors? Is there a concept of juror where they are trying to like solve the I'm just trying to frame my question as well. So when the answer is given, and then how do a bunch of people tell whether the answer is right or not when there is an arbitration? Because the only model I've seen previously, at least in this particular spectrum, was Aragon Court, and I'm just trying to like understand how a particular answer is right or not, especially when there is an arbitration. Is there a concept of juror, or how does it go around?
Yeah, so I only smiled because it's like a really good question, and there's no one answer. Basically, this specific model of the Reality ETH Oracle and the Claros Court is just kind of, one model among many. As you mentioned, Aragon Court is another. I would say that there isn't really a strongly coupled sense of what is the right answer necessarily, or what is, and there's not really a sense of ever what is the just answer yet. So for kind of those participating in the Reality ETH Oracle, basically there's a financial incentive to have the correct, unchallenged, unarbitrated answer. So for things that are super clear, that the financial incentive is probably clear. You say, oh, I come to this first, it's indisputable, I will kind of reap an economic reward, or I will get my bonds back. Or additionally, so if that is challenged with an arbitration bond and it goes to an arbitrator, then there's the more of a concept of jurors. In the case of Claros, the jurors try to reach a Schelling point of this is probably the correct answer. There's definitely, and actually recently there's been a bunch of essays in the ecosystem kind of questioning this model and the kind of limitations of it. I'll share one in the Slack channel, a recent short article by Nathan Schneider that is a summary of like a longer paper of basically on the limitations of crypto economics for governance. So the jurors basically have a Schelling point kind of concept of correctness, saying like, if we can all roughly arrive at the right answer through economic incentives, and this is probably the right answer, there isn't necessarily a kind of strong guideline beyond that. Of course, this is especially for products that are kind of, or projects that are centered within specific communities. There will always be more of a culture around what the correct answer is. And sometimes that can be a malicious kind of correctness as well.
That was the next question. Yeah, cool.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yep. But there are other models, so. Cool, any other questions?
We're good.
Cool. All right, then I will just move straight into the tutorial. Let's see. So it's a little bit different than originally planned because we'll be using XDAI instead of Rinkeby. So what I did was I was originally going to use the URSA token that we minted on Rinkeby last session, but instead I have minted a new token on XDAI. Called Leo, L-E-O. So here, we'll go through and basically set up the Zodiac reality mod on this safe. And we'll do it using the using a snapshot space that uses the LEO token as the token voting token. So in order to do that, I figured I was actually going to pre-prepare this before the workshop, but then I thought it might be neat to show you all. I'm going to send a portion of this kind of XDAI valueless Rinkeby token to all of you using a tool on the safe called CSV airdrop. So basically from the spreadsheet that we've been essentially just adding all of our wallet addresses to. Let me see if this is the correct one. No, that'll be the first one here. So let me just go and download it again. So basically from here, I will be taking all of your addresses and actually, oh, I should actually change this to the XDAI token. Sorry, one second. So this is basically the XDAI token on the Block Scout Explorer for the XDAI network. And basically here, I will airdrop all of your addresses with the XDAI token that has been minted called LEO. And you just download it as a simple CSV file. And then you can kind of come back to the safe and use the CSV airdrop tool. And then basically, if you see below, you've uploaded the CSV and you say basically the amount that everyone's going to receive. Well, you say the token address, you say the specific wallet addresses and the amount everyone will receive. And then it's listed here in kind of more readable format. Submit it. Okay. And so this will allow all of us to vote together. Cool. So this is just so basically if you pair from the last session where you can mint tokens on Rinkeby, XDAI, or mainnet, and then here you add them to your safe, and then basically you can distribute them as you like. And so while that contract is going through and you'll all receive those, basically now we can get to setting up the Zodiac reality mod. So it's as easy as coming kind of the apps tab on the Gnosis safe, coming over to reality mod. And as you can see here, it says enables on-chain execution based on the outcome events. And you open it right up. So here you'll see the Oracle address. This is by default, I believe, the Reality v3 contracts. And then it asks you for your template ID. So this is specifically the kind of Oracle question that's related to your specific snapshot space or your specific platform. And it kind of prompts you to come and set up a template for Reality ETH, the Oracle. And right now it's using the Reality XDAI because we're on the XDAI network. And you go to template type, and this is actually a dropdown, you might not know it. And you can choose the Zodiac reality module. And then basically your language as well, you can choose from a bunch. And the Zodiac reality module by default uses English. Let us know and we can actually set up other languages. I would love to. And basically here it asks for the ENS name. Now here this is specific to Snapshot, although it could be used for other tools in the future. We've prepared a test snapshot space for you here that we can all use today. And basically here, it uses the ENS name ggtest.eth to kind of set up and kind of give a namespace to the snapshot space. So if we go back over here to the template builder, then we enter our ENS name for our snapshot space. And here you can see the adjacent kind of output of what the template looks like. So did the snapshot proposal with the ID X in the space pass the execution of etc. So we can create template. And there's also on our documentation a guide to creating your own custom template, where it just gives you kind of a broader feel of what you can do in terms of and how the template should be set up. So we'll just give this a moment to go through.
Kia, while we're waiting for that to go through, could you just talk a little bit about setting up that snapshot space and what ggtest.eth really is?
Sure. So this is something that I would kind of normally love to walk us all through. But basically, to create a snapshot space, if you go over to the left here, on the snapshot.org page, anyone can go and create a space. You basically do so, and spaces are kind of namespace now by an ENS name. I think most of us are probably familiar with ENS, but kind of DNS on Ethereum. So it could be dawow.eth. And I even looked into, and of course, this the ENS names function on mainnet. Before the tutorial, I actually even looked into kind of getting the DAOWOW ENS name so that we could walk through creating the space together. But gas fees are unfortunately exorbitant for buying new ENS names at the moment. So if you have an ENS name, you can just kind of create a snapshot space out of the box. So basically you enter your ENS name here, and here, I'll just go through there. I won't actually go all the way through. But basically then you set an ENS record that's just kind of registry creating a space. And then after there, you can set your default settings. So basically simple as that. And you come, this is the test space. So you have a name, you can say a little bit about your avatar icon, the main network that you want votes to happen on, though it can index across networks, your main token that you've been using for the given strategy, custom domain skin. It's really come a long way since it was first originally built by the Balancer team. It's really amazing now. But you can add different strategies for voting. So here you can add NFT support, contract calls, different types of delegation, multi-chain. There's quite a lot now at the moment. Yeah, really recommend playing around with it. People kind of only know it as a very straightforward token voting. And then also just how proposals are validated, if there's a delay. And then also you can add any plugins, which later we'll come back here to add the SafeSnap plugin. But yeah, super kind of, then you end up with a space like this. And for some test examples that have happened here is then you can see the vote. Okay.
I just checked and DAO.eth is taken on mainnet.
Yeah, yeah, I checked that as well. I was gonna get DAO dash wow, but unfortunately with gas fees it was like $300.
Who is taking our ETH? Yes.
Yeah, how did they? Maybe they followed the session. They immediately knew they had to squat.
SMH.
Okay, let me just see maybe about if I create a custom template. Let me just go to our little tutorial. Copy paste from here. So basically, if you guys have any question about the mods, you can always come back to the docs here. And basically do the template ID. So let me just see, because this will take a minute. Cool. So basically, should be enough to get going.
Oh, man. We found out that little DAO.eth is open. So,
Little DAO.
so
Nice.
there's some progress in the chat. Yeah, no worries.
Cool. So basically here, it should be fine. So basically doing the custom template, you just put the question in the field and you say, did the proposal with the ID in the R space. So ggtest.e space passed.
Kia, it looks like you have a MetaMask pop-up that hasn't been confirmed yet. So that may be what was going on with the other one.
Okay, I don't see one still. Let me see. It was queued, yeah, didn't see it. Well, we have one now, a little bit more simplistic, but it works.
So the ID for that one is 7.
Yep. Cool, and for the purposes of the tutorial, also thanks, Oren, I appreciate it. Basically, then kind of coming over to the timeout period. So once again, this is how long a proposal is kind of open for bonds to be staked on the correct answer. So here we can just set it to, for the purposes of the tutorial, well, be a little bit safe, 1 minute, and the cooldown as well, 1 minute. And we can say it expires in 7 days, that's fine. So once again, just timeout period means how long people can stake on the Oracle answer. And also cooldown means after the Oracle answer is confirmed, how long before the proposal can be executed. So you have time to prepare if it's a proposal you need to prepare for. And then the expiration is that if the transaction that was attached to the proposal is never executed, it will expire after 7 days. And we'll do the minimum bonds. We'll do it smaller. See, point. Is 0.1 the smallest you can do? Let's see.
You can go as low as you want.
I think the interface though is limiting.
Oh, interesting. I haven't tried doing really tiny bonds. You should be able to do as small as you want.
Yeah, I think we'll have to file this as an issue. Okay, I'll just do 0.1 here. Okay. And then, so no arbitration here, we can set it to, this is XDAI, so right now it's no arbitration. On mainnet, you can also set it to, it should be usually there because Claros is on XDAI, but you can also set it to Claros, so the kind of jury mechanism that I mentioned before. And add the module. So it says no read or write functions available. Oren, do you have any kind of tips on this specifically? Live demo.
That's really bizarre.
Let's just try it again.
Maybe not cloned correctly. This could throw a spanner in the works if we've got a bug that's been introduced recently. But yeah, let's give it another go. I also figured out that if you just do 0.1111 and then you can get a 1 something, then you can kind of add in a bunch of zeros. But this looks to me like it might be an issue with our with the clone factory. Not the contract, but the references that we have to it and what it's telling the clone factory to clone.
Right. We could also just flip over to Rinkeby again and see if it's working.
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah, it seems like we have an issue with the kind of clone on the XI instantiation of reality, which we've switched over.
It may actually be just because the source code is not verified.
Yeah.
So it will probably still function as intended, and there's nothing else that you need to do in the ABI here to get the rest of it working. So you can probably just copy this address and we can drop it into the,
cool,
into the settings. Yeah.
Cool. So what you would normally see after this is successful is just to show everybody. Then you would go through submit, and then you would see a kind of screen like this. Basically, where then the reality module is configured on your safe. And then basically there's a bunch of different kind of contract calls you can make directly, both to read and write and update parameters from the reality mod directly from the interface. And then you can kind of copy paste, as in the case on ours here, to be able to take this. And then this is basically the contract address. That's the instance of reality mod that we can't read here. And then basically now we can go on to the snapshot part. So basically going back to our ggtest snapshot space and already having the reality instance, we can then return and set it up. So if you go to settings, you see all the settings like the name and stuff again. And then you also see at the bottom here, plugins. So SafeSnap is here natively in the interface. oops, I wrong thing. And basically, here I think he put just address and as a string. I'm pretty sure. I'll double check that in the tutorial. Yeah, so basically when you come and put it in, it's basically just JSON format, a field that's address, both included as strings. Cool. And so we've added SafeSnap and added the kind of, once again, just to reiterate, the kind of address that's linked to the module, contract address, and we've put it on the Snapshot plugin. Okay, so it should have been just enabled to there, I believe. Let's see. Yes. Cool. And then it should be that when we're now creating a proposal on our space, so anyone can come here. And if you look at the space's about, you can basically see what kind of setup it's using. So basically, you can see that the main snapshot space is on the XDAI chain. It's proposal validation basic strategy, proposal thresholds. You have to have one LEO token, which if the CSV airdrop has gone through, I should have. Yeah, so everyone who entered their address on the spreadsheet basically now has 10 LEO XDAI tokens and can come to this space that's also linked in the Notion and make a proposal. I'll just walk through and make one. And so
it doesn't look like the SafeSnap setup was correct. So let me just troubleshoot that real quick.
okay, cool.
Well, you may need a refresh. I just tried it on my end.
Should I do the hard refresh?
Yeah, do a hard refresh. Why not?
Cool. If it doesn't work, then we can use a former state of the space. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind checking it out for a second in the interim, we can kind of come up and crowdsource a proposal question. Ideally, so basically with this proposal, anyone can vote on it, and that has LEO tokens, and then we can also use the exit mod to leave the org after. So this will be the first GG test kind of DAO general proposal.
Here, could you drop the address of the reality module in chat somewhere?
Yep. I'll put it in the Zoom chat. Cool. So does anyone have any suggestions for proposals? Right now, basically, we have a safe that controls basically 9,000 LEO tokens. So in addition to this, we can choose to send them to a given address, or we can choose to, we could also decide we should do something with a transaction in it. So we could decide potentially to send some of those LEO tokens to the XDAI DAO house DAO that we created in the first session, if that sounds good.
Oh, interesting. And so in that case, the LEO tokens themselves would be potentially moved based on the results of the vote?
Yep.
Yeah.
So basically we would be kind of adding the transaction here. So I will just prepare, I'll write it out and we can see what I think.
Kia, I dropped the correct settings into chat.
Awesome.
I think what you put in was almost would have worked. We have some additional parameters that you can optionally put in now. But I think if I recall correctly, it was just that it was not wrapped in the curly brackets.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Seems
Did
like
that prompt you to do anything with MetaMask?
no, it's failing.
That's really weird. I wonder
Um,
if it has something to do with the network that you're connected to.
Could be.
It may want you to be on mainnet.
Yeah, it's not super XDAI friendly. Rinkeby would usually come up.
You gotta hit Control-Shift-I and just see if there's a console error. Yeah, okay. I would just switch to mainnet, like switch your MetaMask to mainnet and then try again. The live demo gods.
Yeah, we forgot to do our prayer again today.
All right, keep going with your question, and I'm just gonna build the JSON file and upload it to IPFS manually,
Yeah,
and we can just update the ENS name manually.
Yeah, that would be sick. Thanks.
No worries.
Cool. So basically we can draft the question, and so this could be the proposal could be, and usually each DAO has its own kind of form of naming networks. So if we go to like, also if you go to the main snapshot page here, basically you can see like all of the active DAOs using it. And usually there's kind of like a rough kind of style in the way that people propose for different DAOs. Gitcoin obviously here, cheers. We have Sushi. And I would say Snapshot is, I think originally was favored more by DeFi protocols and then now has really expanded. So you can come here and just kind of look through all of them. And basically going to GG test, we'll just, we'll set the standard for how proposals are phrased. So we can say proposal to transfer 1,000 LEO tokens to DAO House DAO. How many times can you say DAO in one sentence? Proposal, and you could normally, here's the body where you would say what the proposal is actually doing. Funds to our other DAO framework, DAO House, and deployed on XDAI at. We come back, I think from some of the earlier sessions, it should be here. So basically our beloved first pending member, DAO. And basically if we take the contract address, and as we remember, DAO House is always deployed on XDAI. So we'll be transferring XDAI assets from one to the next, and that's always important to keep in mind. So put the address here. And basically, then the choices, we can also come here and choose different types. So since this is only kind of 2 choices, you could, let's try out quadratic voting, why not? Sure. So basically, I think probably a decent amount of people on the call are familiar with quadratic voting, but basically you can spend voting tokens like the LEO tokens, and your voting power is essentially a square root of the tokens that you have voted with. So if you vote with 9 tokens, your voting power will be 3. If you vote with 1, your voting power will be 1, which basically means that the more you want to vote for a given proposal in a plutocratic sense, the more expensive the votes become. So it's a way of kind of limiting both plutocratic influence, though not entirely, but also giving a way to kind of be able to signal, especially in cases where you have multiple choices beyond a binary, kind of different choices. And also if you have an array of different proposals, you can choose to spend your kind of voting credits where they might be most impactful or where you care the most. So starting for this one, we can still do. Yep.
I've got the IPFS hash ready, so if you want to update the
Awesome.
good to go whenever.
So you guys will see a bit kind of behind the scenes. I guess I could do this from the interface, but might as well show actually on ENS. So basically here, what we're going to do, one way to set up a kind of snapshot space settings is actually directly from managing a URL on, or an ENS name on ENS. So basically here, ggtest is our controller of the snapshot space, which actually now sets an actual text record for the snapshot space, and a record, an IPFS record, basically just a JSON file with our settings. And so we can come here and edit the record. Let me just switch back to mainnet. And basically here, I'll put the new IPFS JSON file and confirm. So what this will do is basically, as we're trying to set the kind of plugin from the, basically as we were trying to set the plugin from the snapshot interface, this basically will link a kind of contract address to the SafeSnap reality mod directly and kind of set it as a record on the snapshot space. So what we were doing through the interface, now here we're just through appending a kind of file of settings to the overall kind of record of the space. So that should go through soon.
You may also need to go and change in the snapshot settings. You may need to change it to point just to the ENS name as opposed to your IPNS hash or your IPNS name.
Okay. Do you mean here? No.
I do. If you hit set record on ENS, what is it?
Still check my network.
Oh, okay. So this actually explains why it wasn't working anyway. It looks like we hadn't actually updated the IPFS record to your IPNS. So that's why you couldn't actually make any changes. So this was on us, not on Snapshot. Anyway, we should be good to go now. The settings, well, bear with me. As soon as that transaction confirms, we should be good. I'm just poking the hub server now to try to make it update.
Cool. So we're basically just updating it so that hopefully now we have access to.
Yeah, it should be good to go now. If you
seems all good.
Refresh.
Yay! So excited.
All right.
So now we can take the proposal that we've crafted and basically here so basically we have this proposal. We'll choose quadratic voting again. Yes and no. And so now, because if we go here, what was missing the first time is this lovely little star set that doesn't say it, that lets you know that you have plugins in. And basically before, what was missing is this little kind of transactions tab here. So basically, because we've enabled the SafeSnap plugin with a reality instance that points to the XDAI safe, we're now able to kind of prepare a transaction that will be attached to the proposal and executable when it's successful, or if and when it's successful. Who knows, it could fail. So basically transferring funds. Oh, can I only transfer ETH? Is this a kind of
You
limitation?
can transfer any ERC20
It's from
tokens that
a-
are in the safe. I don't think the safe has any other tokens. So
it has the LEO tokens.
let me double check. I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, let me just double check this is the right safe instance.
You'll need to switch your MetaMask back to XDAI.
Computers suffering. So this, it appears to be, the reality instance appears to be attached to a different safe. Did you use the original reality, the Zodiac reality mod for the IPFNX setting, or?
I could have made a mistake. Let's go and revisit it. So do you want to just drop in the, I think we put it up here. The address for this reality module should be F46. Or let me see. Yeah.
Okay.
And so when you go back to the snapshot space, so you can click on the little button next to where it says XDAI safe and then the address, just to make sure that it's taking us back to the right safe. 1823.
Seems like it.
Is that there? Yep. So it seems like it's connected to the correct safe.
It might be, maybe it has trouble just because it's a recently minted unverified token.
It could be that, actually, I know exactly what this is. So because the token has only been minted to that address, right? It hasn't been transferred. It may not have, depending on the implementation, may not have emitted a transfer event. And so the safe transaction service probably didn't see it.
It has been transferred because I minted it with my EOA.
Right. In that case, I am stumped.
Cool. Well, in this case, we can just basically, I will transfer if I have a little route to you. Okay. Let me just refresh and try it once more. Okay, interesting. Well, I'm going to set it up anyway. And maybe just basically after the course, we can do it. Yeah, maybe just also because we're getting close on time. So we can troubleshoot this at the end of the session and then basically open it up for voting. And I'll set the kind of cool down period to a bit longer as well. So others who weren't able to attend the session can vote, and I'll give a summary. But basically, essentially what this then looks like is what would happen if this were successful is that basically you add the transaction to the proposal. And then once the kind of proposal period has ended, you're able to kind of kick off the Oracle system and basically say this is finished and finalized, request execution, and you set the kind of, you give the initial bond for the question and say what the outcome was of the proposal, if it in fact passed. And it prompts you to say, did this proposal pass and does it need meet the acceptance criteria? And you can say yes. And then basically there, if no one challenges it, then it's finalized in a certain amount of time that you set on the Zodiac mod. And then it becomes, let me, here. And then
the other thing, yeah, we can just build this transaction manually. So we have the.
We only have about 10 minutes left in the session. So I think I want to kind of maybe just walk through the rest and then open up for questions. Cool. But totally, thank you so much. Like, great. So, but we can finalize it after, and then I'll explain to everybody from the sessions. So basically then it will say then when it's finalized, and then basically it becomes executable after it's passed. And this is the cool down period. And it's executed on 16 minutes. And if you put up a bond, you can claim the bond. And then voila, you can execute the transaction. And in this case, 100 alum would be transferred to an address, or in the case of our proposal, 1,000 LEO tokens would be transferred to our DAO house, XDAI DAO. Cool, pretending that all worked. Are there any questions? Was that clear? Was that a lot of different things at once, or in what ways would you find it more useful?
I think a bit ago there was kind of like a question on these three periods. The first, the timeout period. So there's that period of time where anyone can answer questions, and then cool down, and then expiration. I think it was pretty clear when you scrolled through it, but we put a link to the doc that shared those three definitions just for anyone who.
Cool. I'm happy if it would be useful to quickly say them again. So basically when you set up the original kind of Zodiac mod, so when you go here, set it. Basically there's a template ID and basically timeout. So this is after there's a few different ones that are iterated in the doc, but there's initially like the proposal period. So often kind of the defaults, you can set on Snapshot like how long you want a vote to go. So you can say start date, which in this case would be today, and then you can choose the time, and you can also set the end date. So this would be the proposal period. So basically 1 week, and that's the actual proposal period. And then when it comes to the SafeSnap plugin, basically you come back and you see like the vote has been finalized. So after that initial 7-day period has passed, then you enter what is the timeout period that was initially set for the Zodiac mod. And basically what you can do is kind of request execution. What this means is you offer the kind of minimum bond in order for the kind of reality oracle to know whether the proposal has passed or not. So you say, yes, this proposal has passed. No, this proposal hasn't passed. And all the while the kind of timeout is ticking. So if you set the timeout period to 7 days, anyone can come and kind of challenge by posting a higher bond what the outcome was. So that's the timeout period. And then basically it becomes finalized in the timeout period here, saying finalized in 9 minutes. So the timeout period would end in 9 minutes. After the timeout period ends, then you enter the period, the cool down period, which means that after that, like a vote can be executable in a certain amount of time. So in this example, it's executable in 16 minutes. This means, as I said before, like basically from the start, if a proposal requires you to make other certain changes so that things don't break before it passes, or if you just, it could be, maybe the company is transitioning funds and you want to make an announcement before the funds are transferred. It gives you, say, like 60 minutes, or it gives you like a week, depending on what you've set, in order to make that announcement before the transaction can be executed. So after the cooldown period, then it becomes executable by everyone, and anyone can just kind of click here and execute it.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's that. Are there any other questions from anyone else?
Mine was just a general question on any other links that you would suggest for like traditional Web 2 folks. I've seen so many like DAO guides that I was just wondering if there's like a best hits. Like if I show this to my front end and back end engineers on my team, like how we would convert. I'm trying to convert my nonprofit into a DAO. The learning curve is really high. I understand everything, but it's kind of like I'm having trouble like doing a lot of cultural translation. So I was just curious to know if there's any recommendations that people have.
Just in kind of, would you say more of like a kind of just conceptual introduction to voting, or more of like a kind of, or like this as a process-based way of coming to decisions or organizing the operation? Or what do you mean more on the kind of like onboarding on a like technical level?
Onboarding on a technical level and one overview.
Yeah. Snapshot has a lot of great documentation that will just kind of acclimate to like how the voting platform can be used. I can send those links through. And I think why Snapshot is so widely used is because, like, apart from kind of the tutorial today, it's like quite straightforward. So yeah, I can send you some of those documentation, and then I can send, there's a few good just general like governance overviews of what's optional in the space today.
Cool, thanks.
And then we don't have to go into this key now. The strategy section, you pulled that down Snapshot, and it was extensive and really cool looking. There was a question earlier about whether there was kind of like readmes for these different strategies, which I don't know, that might be more of like a snapshot. You can go research and check. But I was just curious, you brought up quadratic voting specifically, but if there were like other things in there that have caught your attention as somebody who's very deep in DAO world as interesting ways to try outside of basic voting.
Yeah, sure. So there's a few, there's like one default that I think is not maybe used enough in DAO land, is that there's the default is kind of single choice voting, but then there's also basically basic voting, which actually allows people to mark that they abstain from a decision, which I think is like DAOs, because people are a part of so many DAOs, and also because I think, you know, there's this idea of like voter apathy, that people don't show up for decisions. I think it's nice to give the opportunity for a kind of voice that is an abstaining voice, and to kind of mark that. So I really think like basic voting, as opposed to kind of single choice voting where it's just yes or no, and basic voting being the one that includes abstain, could be used more widely. Also ranked choice voting here is very interesting in the sense that you can vote on what your order of preferences are. So if there's 1, 2, 3 choices, you can choose 2 as your favorite, 3 as second favorite, first. And that this, I often find this like just, especially in like smaller groups of friends when you need to make a decision, but like you're slightly bigger and stuff, can be a useful way. And yeah, I'm sure on the Snapshot documentation, there's a note about each of these. I'll share it in the Slack. There's a ton of different ones as well. There's like conviction voting, a few other forms that I think will be promising that aren't here yet, but there are other apps that use them. But I'll share in the channel.
One related question from Romeo: if there are any voting mechanisms you've seen based on reputation scores in Gnosis or other participants?
Yeah, so I mean, I believe Aragon has this function. I know DAOstack, which is maybe not the most used platform today. Essentially, its governance was through reputation in a way. So basically, you both gained reputation by default from a successful proposal, and also your ability to vote was kind of weighted by your reputation within the DAO. which you either gain through the initial distribution or through participating in the DAO over time. DAO Stack also had other layers on top of this mechanism that was kind of prediction markets that would like boost proposals to get more attention. So it wasn't strictly reputation voting, but that was the underlying approach of the framework. I'm pretty sure Aragon has this possibility, and I also think in kind of Colony's project management kind of focus that they also take into account like participation points.
Yeah, let me jump in on that real quick. Colony's kind of whole shtick is reputation, right? You earn reputation when the colony pays you in its native token, and they actually just made a snapshot strategy that uses Colony's reputation as your vote weight. So you can choose that instead of like ERC20 balance of to pick your vote weight.
Interesting. Great.
And also like if you are doing like a non-transferable reputation token, and it's kind of compatible with any of the token standards that Snapshot recognizes, then you can just do kind of normal token voting on Snapshot, but use the reputation token as the voting token. So it's not token voting like as a basic default isn't always you know, directly monetary.
Yeah.
Cool. Are there any other questions? Slowly getting dark here in Berlin.
Yeah.
ERC 721 was listed on there.
Yeah, so if you hold set in a series, you can set what you can vote with. So let's see. There it's here. So yeah, from the voting strategies, you can vote with 721s, do delegation, you can do a bunch of other different ones as well. These will all be in the Snapshot documentation. So you can also do ERC 1155. Yeah, basically any kind of token type here you can vote with.
Well, yeah, ERC 1155 has got some upvotes in the chat. Loot character guilds, nice.
9 spaces. Yeah, so yeah, this basically as much as you can imagine, you can vote with here. I believe these are all those pull requests to the repos that were incorporated.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's not terribly complex to write those strategies either. So if there's something that doesn't exist that you want, like if you want your vote weight to be based on something else that that essentially an RPC node can decipher or can kind of return the data on, then yeah, you can create a strategy for it.
That's really cool. Oh, ETH wallet age, interesting.
Yeah, that's I'm scrolling. There's like no end.
Okay.
Mm.
We don't want to get to Berlin midnight. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like cool. Well, thank you all so much, and sorry we couldn't get the full circle through, but we'll be sure to do it before the kind of next and final session. Basically in the final session, we'll be connecting all the threads of using the exit mod and the reality mod here for proposals, connecting it to the DAO house DAO with the safe minion and allowing them to communicate cross-chain.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kia. It's really informative and excited. Hopefully we have Rinkeby back next week, our trusted Rinkeby friends. And yeah, really means a lot. Thank you both.
Cool. Likewise. Thank you all.